Hi, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to PPA 500. It is 4 o'clock, and so without further ado, we will get started for the evening. My name is Dr. Powell, and I'll be your instructor for the next 8 weeks. This section is a hybrid online section, so it only meets for the first half of the semester. So we have our first meeting tonight, and then we'll wrap up our final week. Technically, October 14th, we'll see how we're doing. We probably won't have to meet on October 14th, and hopefully just people use that session for the completion and submission of your final assessment. But we'll see how we go and how we proceed through our 8 weeks together. I look forward to working with everyone. I hope that your semester is off to a good start. I think for most people in the class, this is your introduction to the MPA program. So welcome to the MPA program. I hope you're able to attend the orientation that Dr. Zhao and Dr. Butts do every semester. We will cover some of that information again tonight, just kind of as just to reiterate some of that important information about the MPA program. And also, if you were not able to attend the orientation, then you'll get the information here in the second half of class tonight. I do want to let you know that I record all of our sessions, and I will provide the link to the recording no later than tomorrow morning on our Canvas site. So we're recording for that. We're also recording for accommodations purposes. And so the university does provide you with some privacy protections if you would like to avail yourself of those. One thing, since we are being recorded, you are not required to use your camera, so that's completely up to you. If you'd like to use your camera, you are welcome to, but you are not required to. And the second privacy provision afforded to you by the university is if you would prefer not to use your full name, you don't have to use your full name. You could use your first name or your initials or whatever you are comfortable with. And so those privacy protections are afforded to you because these sessions are being recorded. But again, the link to the recording will be available by tomorrow morning. What I typically do is I typically upload our recording to YouTube and then provide the YouTube link to you in our Canvas site. So just want to let you know about that right off the bat tonight. I don't have a lot planned for us this evening. This is our first evening together. So what I'd like to do is in the first part of the class tonight, we will go through the syllabus, talk about the course requirements, talk about why we start the program with this course and what this course should provide you and how it should equip you well for all your future courses in the program. Then the second half of class tonight, we will talk about the orientation information, basic information about the program, reiterate some of those important policies that you need to remain aware of during your time in the program, talk to you a bit about the program's mission statement and why we have the mission statement that we have, the public service values that underpin that mission statement. And then I'd also like to talk to you a bit about the importance of NASPA accreditation. And our program is NASPA accredited, and just kind of let you know what it means to be a NASPA accredited program and some of the skills and competencies that you can anticipate getting through your time here in the MPA program. So that's what I have on the agenda for tonight. I would assume that probably won't take us much past 6 o'clock this evening. So we might have a bit of an early night, but I think that's fine if we just kind of ease into the semester together. This summer went by very, very quickly. It's kind of shocking to me. This is my 25th year on faculty here at Cal State Long Beach, and it seems like every single year those summers just get shorter and shorter and shorter. It's my 30th year overall as a full-time faculty member. I taught in Florida and Illinois before I came here to California. And so every year it just gets shorter and shorter, but time does go by very quickly. As we go through our session tonight, if you have any questions or need any clarifications or anything at all, I have my text chat box open, so you can feel free to put your questions in text chat. I will monitor text chat as we go through our course tonight, and we'll respond to any questions or clarifications in text chat. If you would like to use your microphone, you can always hold up your hand, raise your hand, and then we can have you participate that way as well. It really depends upon what types of questions or clarifications that you may have or need. Most people tend to use text chat, but I leave it completely up to you. So that is what we will be doing tonight. The Canvas site has been open for some time now, so I hope you've had a chance to go and look around the Canvas site. I'll take you on a really quick tour of our Canvas site in a few minutes just to kind of show you where all the drop boxes are at, where all the information and resources are located to help you be successful this semester in this course. But hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at the syllabus. I have made some modifications to the syllabus, and I finally decided to stop modifying the syllabus as of a few days ago. So I'm not modifying it anymore. This is the final version of the syllabus. One of the modifications I made to the syllabus is I dropped out one of the assignments that we had. I don't think anyone minds having one less assignment for your first course in the program. So that was the primary change that I made to our syllabus. But the syllabus that you should see there on the screen in front of you, that should be our final syllabus that we will be adhering to throughout our 8 weeks together. So let me walk you through the syllabus a little bit and just, I'm not going to read every single word of the syllabus. I'm assuming you had a chance to already take a look at it, but I do want to just kind of hit some of the highlights in the syllabus to make sure that everyone knows what we are doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it, and I think most importantly, why we are doing it. And that's one of the things I really emphasize in this class is why are we learning these concepts? Why are we learning these theories? How can we take these concepts and theories and apply them in a practical setting in the public and nonprofit sector? And I always like to start all of my classes by telling everyone that I have a favorite question and I also have a favorite answer. And that's true for all of my courses. My favorite question that I have for all my courses is the simple question of, so what? So we're going to talk about theories such as ideal bureaucracy. We'll talk about theories, expectancy theories. We'll talk about, human motivation theories. We'll talk about all these different theories. The question is, well, so what? Are we just learning these theories just for the purpose of our own edification? Or are we learning these theories so that we can apply them in practical settings? Here in an MPA program, we are both an academic as well as a professional program. As an academic program, we are at the graduate level, which means that we have certain expectations in terms of your critical thinking, in terms of your reasoning, in terms of the quality of your writing. So we are academic in that regard. But as an MPA program, we are also a professional program. So we are always looking for that nexus between theory and practice. And so whenever we cover a concept or theory, we'll ask, well, so what? How does that help us? How can we then take that and apply it in a practical real world setting? So what is my favorite question? My favorite answer will probably be maddening to you and will probably drive you crazy, but my favorite answer is it depends. And I know it kind of sounds like a cop out to say, well, it depends, but it depends, I think, is the most appropriate answer in a field like public administration. Because the way in which we apply our concepts and skills and theories will depend upon the context of the situation in which we find ourselves. So one theory, one concept, or one set of skills may work for a certain point in time in the Department of Agriculture, but may not work equally as well for a local economic development department. So it really does depend upon the context of the issue. So whenever I say it depends, don't get frustrated. It just means that that is the way in which things tend to work in public administration. Public administration, the world of public administration is very complex. And so to deal with that complexity, we have to really align our approaches to the situations in which we find ourselves. So you'll have to get used to me asking the question, so what, and giving the answer of it depends. But we'll cover that a little bit more as we go through our session tonight. But let's just run through the syllabus very quickly and kind of show you what we're doing and why we are doing it. I have my contact information there on the syllabus. The best way to contact me is by far by email as opposed to my phone number. One of the reasons for that is I no longer have a phone in my office. For cost-cutting purposes, the college decided to remove phones from faculty offices across a lot of different departments in the college. And so my phone magically disappeared about a year ago. It took me about a month to realize it was gone, but when I finally realized it was gone, I had to find out why, and that's why. So I don't have a phone anymore. So if you call me, it'll be much more difficult to get a response than if you email me. My email is up there on our syllabus, david.powell@csuob.edu. And you'll find that the email convention here at the university is a pretty simple one. First name dot last name at csuob.edu. You can also contact me via email using the mail function on Canvas. And so that if you send me a message through Canvas, it'll go directly to my email. I have all of my emails pushed to my phone. And so whenever you email me, I'll get a little notification on my phone. And so I tend to respond very quickly to emails. And I always respond to emails within 12 to 24 hours. If you don't get a response from me within 24 hours, reach out to me again. But I think there's very little likelihood that you won't get a response within about 12 to 24 hours. Now, this is a hybrid course. The university likes to call it a mixed meeting type of modality. It's a lot of alliteration there, a mixed meeting modality. But the reason why they call it mixed meeting modality is because our sessions are synchronous in that we meet on Tuesday at 4 o'clock via Zoom, just like we're doing tonight. And we'll be meeting on the dates that are listed there in the syllabus. And so every week until October 7th. As I said, October 14th, we're going to kind of play it by ear. If we have information we have not yet gotten to, then we may meet on October 14th. If we have covered everything by October 7th, then we can just reserve October 14th to give you time to finish up your final assessment and submit that final assessment. So on Tuesday evenings, we have our live synchronous Zoom sessions. Then you also have Canvas essays that you will be doing through Canvas on discussion board. That's an asynchronous type of modality. So that's why they call us mixed modality, because we have the synchronous on Tuesday evenings, and then we have the asynchronous discussion boards that you are able to work on throughout the week. So the only night you need to be in front of your computer will be here on Tuesday evenings at 4 o'clock. My office, if you're on campus, my office is in the SSPA building, room 232. The SSPA building, Social Sciences and Public Affairs, I think is the official name of the building. Our department's been there since about 2010. They just renovated the building, so it looks much nicer than it used to look. It used to be a horrible building to be in. Now they've painted the walls, they put in smart classrooms. It's much nicer than it used to be. So if you're on campus and you want to come by and visit, send me an email, let me know. A lot of my work I do virtually because all the courses I teach this semester are all done virtually. In terms of office hours, I have official office hours listed there from 2 to 4 p.m. on Tuesdays. That's just kind of a placeholder. If you need to talk with me, if you have questions, send me an email. Most questions we can handle really well through email. If it's something that necessitates a face-to-face, we can do a Zoom session, but just send me an email and I can always accommodate other times and other days outside of Tuesdays from 2 to 4. The university policy says that office hours follow the modality of the course. So since we have an online course, my office hours then are supposed to be online as well. And so that's why we use either email or if necessary, we can always do a standalone Zoom session. So I think that's it for all of our contact information up there. I told you who I am. I told you I've been here at Long Beach for a very long time. I spent of my 25 years here, I spent over 10 years as department chair, and I spent the last 20 years as the program director for our distance learning MPA program. So we also operate a distance learning program that's a self-support program in combination with the College of, they always change their name, College of Professional and Continuing Education. And we've been providing that program since 1997. I've been the director of it since 2005. So I've been around for a while. I teach this course every single fall and spring semester. Been teaching it every fall and spring semester for probably about the past 14 or 15 years. This course is designed to provide you with a good introduction to the MPA program. So what we will do in this course is our primary focus is to get you ready for all the other courses you'll be taking in the program. This course is different than a lot of your future courses. It really is very much an introductory type of course. So we're going to deal with issues such as what is public administration? Is public administration an academic discipline? What types of theories have we developed to understand public organizations? What are the ethical principles associated with being a public servant? How do we efficiently and effectively manage human resources and fiscal resources? How do we effectively and efficiently implement policies and programs? So, we are going to touch on each of the major core areas of the MPA program. So we're going to foreshadow those 5 core content areas of public budgeting and finance, which will be your 555 course you'll be taking in the future. Human resource management, which will be PPA 577. Organization theory, which is PPA 660. Policy analysis, which is PPA 670. And research methods / program evaluation, which is PPA 696. So this course, our 500 course, is kind of like a buffet, kind of like a little sampler plate of all the different things that you're going to cover throughout your entire core curriculum in the program. And so that is our kind of limited purpose in this class. As such, we're not a very research heavy type of course. So you're not going to be doing a lot of research papers or anything like that. This is really a course that just kind of gets you ready to be successful in the MPA program. It is a survey-oriented course, and as I said, we're going to cover topics and fields such as intergovernmental relations, principles of public policy administration, org theory, personnel, human relations, budgeting, public policy, cover all those major core content areas. In addition to those core content areas, you'll notice in our syllabus that we also have a week, which will be next week, that we will devote the entire week to the coverage of American government institutions and processes. That is a change in this 500 course that we implemented probably about 6 or 7 years ago. So if you have a colleague or a friend who went through the MPA program maybe 15 years ago and took PPA 500, their 500 class looks a lot different than our 500 class. What we realized a few years ago is that we have students who come into our program from a variety of different academic backgrounds. Now, naturally, political science tends to dovetail pretty well with public administration, but we found out that a majority of our students come into the program from disciplines other than political science. And for an article I did a few years ago, I looked at our student body over the past several years and looked at their undergraduate majors. And I found that about 40% of our students came in with political science, but the majority, the other 60%, came from fields as varied as chemistry and biology and physics and sociology and psychology and history, and really all over the entire map. Criminal justice, healthcare, just about any major you can think of is represented in our MPA program. So we understood that because people come into the program from majors other than political science, you may not have had a lot of exposure to American government. And so it's important that we have a week in this course devoted just to American government. Because after all, the work of administration is done within public organizations. And those public organizations are, for the most part, governmental organizations. They are created through enabling legislation through a legislative body such as Congress or a state legislature. And so therefore they carry legal authority and they carry the force of law. And we have to understand how those laws are created, why they are created the way in which they are, and how this all forms a political environment in which we do the work of public administration. And so we've added that American government module, if you will, into this course a few years ago. If you are a former political science major, then you're probably familiar with a lot of the things that we are going to deal with in our discussion of American government. But it's important that we all have this basic foundational level understanding of American government coming into the MPA program. I've listed there for you the course objectives, and so there are 4 of them. Comply with requirements of the MPA program and policies. We'll cover those policies again here in the second half of class tonight. Articulate the basic concepts of American government and political institutions. Apply the major theories and themes of public policy administration, and articulate the basic elements of the major subfields within the discipline of public administration. As we've already said, we'll be meeting synchronously at 4 o'clock in our Zoom sessions. We're using one link for all of our Zoom sessions. I provided that link to you on our in our Canvas site in that announcement. We're going to have the same link that we'll use for each one of our weekly sessions. So you only have to remember one link throughout our 8 weeks together. Textbooks. There are two primary textbooks that we are using in this course. The first one is Don Kettle's Politics of the Administrative Process. Now, I know that there's a 2023 edition. There's also a 2021 edition. The only real difference between the 2021 and 2023 editions is that Don added an extra chapter on the impacts of COVID for the 2023 edition. And that's really the only difference. Everything else, the line's pretty much the same as the previous edition. So in your D1 DA digital materials, I believe it's a 2023 edition that they provide. If you choose to go out and buy your own materials and you want to get the 2021 edition, that will work equally well. But that's going to be completely up to you. Then that's going to be our primary textbook. It's kind of our touchstone for the course. I do not teach from textbooks. This is a graduate level program. And so I look at the Kettle textbook as being the background information that will help you then be successful in our Tuesday evening sessions. When we get together on Tuesday evenings, I will provide different information to you. I'll provide information in a different way and kind of a different way of looking at these topics and these issues, because I really believe if you just teach from a textbook, there's no reason to actually have an instructor. You could just read the textbook. So instead, what we think is in a class like this, what we will do is we will learn from three different sources. We learn from the readings in the course. You'll hopefully, if I do my job right, and there's no guarantee of that, but if I do, you'll learn from me. And then you'll also learn from each other, primarily through our discussion board posts that we're doing in our Canvas site. So it's important that you're here on Tuesday evenings. If you cannot be here on a Tuesday evening, as I said, the sessions are recorded and you can go back and watch the recordings at a later time. Then if you have any questions, you can always send me an email for those clarifications. I do not award points for attendance. I don't grade on attendance. I figure this is a graduate professional program, so you can make your own mind up as to whether or not you are here in our sessions on Tuesdays. So if you can't be here on a Tuesday, you're not going to lose any points for that. The other textbook we're using, the Schafferts and Hyde Classics of Public Administration, is really more of a compilation of classical articles in the field of public administration. And the reason why I assigned that book is I want you to have direct firsthand exposure to reading these articles rather than just listening to me tell you what I think the articles are about. I want you to read them. I want you to form your own opinions and perspectives on those articles. Now, we are not going to read every single article out of the classics text. We will read a selection of those articles. Now, both the Kettle as well as the classics text, those are provided to you by default through the D1DA program. And you're probably familiar with that program, but in the D1DA program, I think they're changing the name, but I still call it D1DA. What happens is that you are provided with these digital materials. You can access those through our Canvas site, and then the university then adds on a fee onto your student account to then pay for those digital materials. If you prefer to go out there and obtain the books on your own, then what you'll need to do is opt out of D1DA. And you would have to opt out no later than September the 8th, which is, I guess, the drop deadline for the course. So you have to opt out if you want to by September the 8th. Then you would go out there and get your own materials from wherever or whomever you want to get those materials from. So just make sure you keep that date in mind if you want to opt out. It's got to be done by September 8th. Otherwise, you're opted into the program by default and you have access to those digital materials throughout the course. If you have any questions as we go through the syllabus, again, feel free to put them in text chat or let me know, and I can always stop at any time and do any clarifications or answer any questions that you may have. Next section of the syllabus is what most people are very interested in. I certainly understand that. I was in your shoes, back in the 1700s when I went through my program. But I know that evaluation criteria is important. So what will we be doing and how will those assignments be graded? We have 5 different criteria that we're using for grades in this course. The first will be your assessments. You have a midterm and a final assessment. These are not examinations. I can't stress that enough. I know in the program there are some courses where instructors will use kind of your classic examinations. I don't do that because I feel that we are a graduate level program. I can't really think of a situation where you're in an agency and you're required to take a test, a 1 hour test. That just really doesn't happen in the work that we do. So instead, what I want to do is I want to use these assessments. They're assessments because they are comprised, each one of them, the midterm and the final, will be comprised of 5 different scenarios. These are scenarios that I write that should reflect practical public administration types of situations. They're very brief scenarios, usually 1 to 2 paragraphs in length. You read through those scenarios, and then your job is to answer the 2 questions associated with each scenario that will require you to take the information that we have covered in the class and apply that information appropriately to address those scenarios. The nice thing about an assessment like this is that it's truly an assessment. You do not have to do outside research in order to answer these questions. This is an assessment of the information that you have acquired, the skills and concepts you have learned in this PPA 500 course. So no need to do any outside research. You can use the information that we cover on Tuesday evenings. You can use the information from the readings that we have assigned for the class. All of that is fair game for you to use in answering those questions. So I like that it truly is an assessment. I also like the fact that there are no quote unquote right answers. You will be evaluated, your responses will be evaluated based upon your ability to justify your answer as being appropriate for this scenario. There may be several appropriate answers to the questions in these scenarios. And all you have to do is make sure yours is appropriate and then justify why yours is the appropriate one for the scenario. So again, no right or wrong answers. It is not a timed type of examination. What I will do is I will make the midterm assessment and the final assessment available to you on our Canvas site 2 weeks before they are due. So you'll have 2 weeks to work on the midterm and 2 weeks to work on the final. I use the terms midterm and final very loosely in that the midterm doesn't happen at the midterm. I could just as easily call it assessment 1 and assessment 2, or assessment A and assessment B. You'll notice that the midterm assessment is actually due at the end of September, and then the final assessment is due on October 14th. The final assessment is not cumulative. So it will just cover the topics that we cover after the midterm assessment. So admittedly, there's more information that's covered in the midterm assessment than what is covered in the final assessment. But those are assessments, again, just to assess what you have learned in this specific course, not using any outside information or outside resources, just what's been provided to you here in the course. So the midterm and final assessments, again, to reiterate, will have 5 scenarios each. Each one of those scenarios will have 2 questions. And so there'll be a total of 10 questions on the midterm and 10 questions on the final assessment. So those are the assessments. Each of the assessments are worth 100 points. So that's 200 of our 360 total points. Then you also have the initial skills self-assessment assignment. The initial skills self-assessment is part of our assessment system that I put in place way back, my first term as chair, way back in 2007. And it's been with us ever since and has been serving us well. And so we haven't really seen a need to change it. Just made some minor modifications to some of the categories on the assessment, but our actual assessment system remains the same. And so we're going on 18 years now where it's been serving us well. So let me scroll down to the bottom of our syllabus where I have the initial skills self-assessment. So there it is. So the initial skills self-assessment is just what it sounds like. It is a self-assessment. which means this is the opportunity for you to assess your own skills across a variety of different skill levels. There are no right answers on this. This is graded as credit, no credit. You submit it, you get 5 points. You don't submit it, you don't get the 5 points. But there are no right or wrong answers. It is purely an honest assessment of your skill levels and your comfort, how comfortable you are and how skilled you are in these different areas. You'll see in part one of the assessment, it's a very simple Likert ordinal response scale of 1 to 5. One would reflect you know nothing or have no experience with this area. A 5 would reflect that you know a lot and have a great deal of experience in the area. And so you'll be choosing on that scale from 1 to 5 how much experience and how much you currently know about the core areas such as budgeting and financial management, decision making, ethics, oral communications, organization behavior, human resource management, policy analysis, problem solving, research and statistics, teamwork, and written communication. So you'll just be selecting an ordinal category for each one of those different skills. That should not take you very long at all because, again, you're just picking a number from 1 to 5 for each of those. Then in part two of the initial skills self-assessment, we want you to tell us a little bit about your experience. So a narrative description of your experience in the 5 main areas of budgeting, HR, org theory, policy, and research methods. Now, if you don't have any experience in one of those areas, that's fine. You can just say, I have no experience in this area. And that is an acceptable answer. Uh, just giving an example, a lot of people coming into the program, they've never dealt with a public budget before. That's fine. You're going to take PPA 555 public budgeting, where you will deal with public budgets. And so you'll get that training in your time in the program. I had several years ago in the distance learning MPA program, a student who came into the program who was a budget analyst who managed a $500 million capital budget for Metro. He had a lot of experience. He was a 5 out of 5 on budgeting and finance. And so, he had a lot to talk about there. But just give us 1 or 2 sentences in terms of your experience in each of these 5 areas. Then the last part 3, we want to know what you hope to get out of the MPA program. So what specific skills do you hope to acquire during your time here in the MPA program? So why are you taking the program and what do you hope to get out of the program? So that's the initial skills self-assessment. Again, no right or wrong answers. This initial skills self-assessment will then become the first document that will go into your student learning portfolio that you'll be submitting at the end of the program. Once you have completed your 5 cases in PPA 697, you then assemble your portfolio. And when you assemble your portfolio, you will be redoing this initial skills self-assessment in a document called the final skills self-assessment, which is just the exact same thing as this, except you're doing it at the end of the program. And in part 3, instead of telling us what skills you want to get out of the program, since you're at the end of the program, you'll be telling us what skills you acquired in the program and how the program helped you in your career. This initial skills self-assessment you are doing here in 500, and the final skills self-assessment that you'll do in a year or 2 or 3 or whenever you're finishing the program in 697, they go together into part 1 of your student learning portfolio. But we'll talk more about the student learning portfolio in a few minutes when we get to our program introduction. So this is what we're calling the initial skills self-assessment. Again, shouldn't take you very long to do it, but I do ask that you give it some thought and you be as honest as you can possibly be in terms of your skills and your knowledge in those different areas on the initial skills self-assessment so that you'll have a point of comparison whenever you do your final skills self-assessment once you get to the end of the MPA program. So that initial skills self-assessment, again, credit, no credit, and it is worth 5 out of the 360 points. Then in addition to that, you will also be doing a draft advancement to candidacy form. And allow me briefly to share out the advancement form. The advancement to candidacy forms are available on our Canvas site. So I have links on there for the advancement forms right there on our Canvas site. They're also available then on the departmental website as well. This is the advancement to candidacy form for people in the general MPA program. Now, when you apply to the MPA program, you chose one of three different options. The first option is the general MPA option. That's the option that well over 90% of our students select. By default, you're probably in the general option. There's a second option, the option of for urban affairs. And there's a third option for public works management. There are different advancement forms for each one of those three different options. Just for the sake of time tonight, I have the general advancement form up here on our screen. If you're in the option urban affairs or the option in public works management, I have those advancement forms again on our Canvas site. So you'll fill out the advancement form that is associated with the option that you are in. This is just a draft form. So you are not submitting it officially now to advance to candidacy. You cannot advance to candidacy until you have already completed 6 units in the program with a cumulative GPA of at least 3.0. So you're not allowed to advance candidacy here in your first semester in the program. But I like to do a draft advancement form so that you can kind of plan out your classes and then I can take a look at it and can provide you some feedback in terms of what I think about how you sequenced your courses, in terms of when you are taking them, as well as give you a little feedback in terms of the 5 electives that you have chosen. Some electives are offered more frequently than others. So, for instance, if you are interested in leadership, PPA 571 is one of your electives. That is an elective that's usually offered every fall and spring semester. Now, Dr. Butts is our current department chair, so he makes the schedule now. I don't make the schedules anymore for the stateside program. But when I was making schedules, every single semester we had PPA 571 leadership. So that's one that you're pretty sure you're going to be able to get any fall or spring semester. There are other courses that are not offered that frequently. Microcomputer applications, PPA 521. That's offered sometimes once per year, sometimes once every 3 semesters. So that might be something you may have to wait around a semester in order to get. But that's the type of feedback I can give you so that you know if you're going to be able to stay on your schedule in terms of getting your MPA done within the time period you want to get it done. But this is just a draft form. So again, no right or wrong answers, just being done for feedback. So at the top of the form, you have your basic information here. Your admit term, I think for almost everyone here in this course, your admit term is fall of 2025. Your advancement term will be the semester in which you advance, which cannot be before spring of 2026. The requirements of advanced candidacy, as I said before, you have to have a minimum GPA of 3.0, which if you're new to the program, you don't have a GPA yet. And you have to successfully complete 6 units in the program with an average grade of B, an average of 3.0. And you have to complete the orientation. Now, if you attended the orientation, the program orientation, you can just put the date in which you attended that orientation in there. If you did not get a chance to attend the orientation, we will cover that information here in our class tonight. So you can just put tonight's date, August 26, 2025, which I hope that's tonight's date. You can just put that date in there and that will then satisfy your orientation requirements. Then this next section are your core courses. And as you probably already know, your core courses are this course, budgeting, HR, org theory, policy analysis, research methods, and then 2 sections of 697 directed research. The reason why we require students to take 2 sections, a total of 6 units of 697, is because we realized pretty quickly that really no one was getting all 5 cases done in 3 units. And it took more than 3 units. So students were taking report in progress grades, and it was taking them a while then to get those cases done. Became very messy for the program, became very messy for students. So we added on this second section. In those 2 sections of 697, you will be completing those 5 case studies. 1 case study in budgeting, 1 in HR, 1 in org theory, 1 in policy, and 1 in research methods. An important note here as you are filling out your draft advancement form is that all your core courses must be completed before you take 697. So as you are planning out your courses with the semester and the year you plan on taking them, make sure that the semesters and the years that you're taking your core courses will be before the semester and the year that you are taking 697. You are allowed to take both sections of 697 in the same semester. It's completely up to you. I think what I have seen over the past several years is there's a trend towards students taking all 6 units in one semester, but we do still have some students who break it up and do 3 units in one semester, 3 units in another. That is completely up to you. So make sure that all your core courses would be complete before you register for 697. Forget about the grade column. You don't have to worry about that because you don't have grades yet, so just leave that blank. Then you have your elective coursework. You have to complete 15 units of electives. That's 5 courses. All of our courses are 3 units, and so that's 5 3-unit courses. So just list the electives that you want to take and then the semester and the year that you wish to take those courses. Now, as you probably already know, you can take elective courses outside of our department. However, you really do need to get the approval of the graduate advisor before you do that. And the reason for that is that some of those courses outside our department are impacted, which means they're open only to majors from those programs. So, for instance, the College of Business, most of their programs, graduate programs, are impacted and are only open to COB students. They're not open to any students from College of Health and Human Services. So if you do want to take a course outside our department, you'll want to, before you actually register for that course in the future, you'll want to contact our graduate advisor, Dr. Zhao, and make sure that's a department in which you will be able to take that course. But for our purposes here on the draft form, you just list the courses you want to take as electives and the semester and year in which you want to take those courses. And as I said, I can provide you feedback in terms of how frequently those courses tend to be offered. Then the last thing here is the internship. So in terms of an internship, if you have at least 1 year of professional administrative work experience, you will be able to waive the internship. So if you have at least 1 year of full-time professional administrative experience, you would just check the waiver box, then list your employer where you're employed at on the line, and then that will end up waiving your internship requirement once you actually officially advance candidacy. If you do not have at least 1 year of professional experience, then you will be required to complete an internship. The internship is done as part of an internship course known as PPA 585. Dr. Butts, in his time as chair, has done a really nice job of setting up articulation agreements with several small cities around Southern California. I know he has articulation agreements with La Palma, Seal Beach. I think he might have Huntington Beach as well. You're probably going to get the emails from Geraldine about all the different internship opportunities that are out there. And so you would have to do that internship and you would have to register for PPA 585. Now, again, that's not this semester, that's going to be in the future. But the internship can be very useful, especially if you don't have that type of administrative experience. And you'll have to coordinate with Dr. Zhao and or Dr. Butts on obtaining those types of internships. I will note to you, though, that if you do have to register for PPA 585 in a future semester and do an internship, that's an additional 3 units on top of your 39 units for the MPA degree. So that would then require that you've completed 42 instead of 39 units. That's not our rule as a department. That's the rule of NASPA, our accrediting body. They do not allow internship units to count toward the degree. So this is your draft form. You'll just fill out that draft form, submit it to me. I'll take a look at it, provide you feedback on it, and give you your 5 points. And so this just allows you to start planning out your course of study now at the beginning of the program so that when you are actually officially able to advance a candidacy, you'll pretty much have your form all ready to go, and it'll just be a matter of submitting that form and getting it approved by Dr. Zhao. So this is just a draft. You're not advancing at this time. So that is the draft advancement to candidacy form requirement. And let me pull up our syllabus again and hop back into that. So 5 points for the initial skill self-assessment, 5 points for the draft advancement to candidacy form, 100 points for the midterm assessment, 100 points for the final assessment. And then we have our Canvas essays. There are 5 graded Canvas essays throughout our time together over these 8 weeks, 30 points for each one of those Canvas essays. Let me talk to you a little bit about those Canvas essays. What you'll be doing, and I'll show you this in a second, is in our Canvas site, we have a discussion board. For each of these 5 Canvas essays, there is a separate link for a prompt that I provide for you. And in fact, let me just show you the prompts right now, even though it's not due for a little bit. Let me scroll down. Here are the prompts that we're going to be using this semester. So the first prompt for Canvas essay number 1, and I use discussion board and Canvas essay. I use those terms interchangeably. So you see discussion board, it means our Canvas essays. So for your first Canvas essay, what you'll be doing is in 2, 3, or 4 paragraphs, so a very concise, parsimonious response, you'll be responding to the prompt, in Federalist number 10, Madison cautioned us against the negative effects of factions. Do you believe that America is more factionalized and divided today than in the past? Provide examples to support your position. What can be done to control the effects of factions more effectively? That will be the prompt that you'll be responding to in your initial response. So 2, 3, 4 paragraph parsimonious response to that prompt for Canvas essay number 1. Then for each of these weeks, you will then have to respond to 2 of your classmates. So for each week, you will have a total of 3 posts. Your initial response, which is 2 to 4 paragraphs, and then a response to 2 of your classmates. Each of those classmate responses will be shorter, usually about a paragraph or so will be enough to suffice for those classmate responses. So that kind of gives you a flavor of what we will be doing in these 5 Canvas essays. I do ask in these Canvas essays that you make sure that they are well written. So please do make sure to proofread them. A lot of people do like to use some type of, whatever word processing program, Word or whatever you like to use. Use that in advance so you can, spell check it and proofread it, and then copy and paste it into the discussion forum. I ask that you don't just put a link to a file in there, actually copy and paste the text into the discussion area. When you copy and paste the text directly into the discussion area, people are more likely to actually read your posts. If you just put a link in there, people will just pass by it and not click on the link. So copy and paste directly into that discussion forum. So we got 5 of those Canvas essays. Again, for each of those Canvas essays, there'll be 3 posts, your initial response, and then responses to 2 classmates. I also have an introduction Canvas post that you'll be doing. That is not graded. It's just to provide you with the opportunity to introduce yourself to me as well as to your classmates. So you can include as much or as little as you are comfortable of including in that introduction. So the introduction is not graded, just to kind of give you a little introduction to everyone else in the course. So we've got 5 graded Canvas essays, 30 points each. What I will do is 20 of those 30 points will be assigned for your initial response, and then 5 points will be assigned to each of your 2 responses to classmates for a total of 30 points for each of those weeks. We've got 5 of them, adds up to 150 points. Add the whole thing up, and our entire 8 weeks together will be out of a total of 360 points. The grading scale, if you are new to Cal State Long Beach, we do not have pluses and minuses for final grades. So we only do A, B, C, D, F. I wish we had pluses and minuses. I've been here 25 years. In my 25 years here, we have had 3 campus-wide votes on whether or not we should have pluses and minuses. Faculty vote overwhelmingly in favor of pluses and minuses. Students vote overwhelmingly against pluses and minuses. There are a heck of a lot more students here than there are faculty, so the students win the vote, and we don't have pluses and minuses. My personal preference is in a graduate program, we tend to have a lot of grade compression, and that most of our final grades tend to congregate around the A and the B level. So I like pluses and minuses because it gives us the opportunity to distinguish between someone who finished a class with 99% and someone who finished a class with a 90%. But given our current system, both the 90% and the 99% would end up with an A in the course. But my grading scale is your basic 90, 80, 70, 60 type of grading scale. I will mention to you again, there's a lot of grade compression, so most grades tend to congregate around the A and the B level. If you earn a C in a class in the MPA program, that is okay. That will still count towards your MPA degree as long as you can balance that C with an A in another course. Because to stay in good academic standing, you have to maintain a cumulative GPA of 3.0. But it's not the end of the world if you get a C in a class. You just have to balance it with an A in another class. Now, if you get a D in a class, that is more problematic because Ds do not count toward graduate level degrees. If you got a D in a class, which is exceedingly unusual in the program, but if you do get a D in a class, you would then have to retake that class to try and increase your grade. So if you got a D in a class, you'd have to retake the class in the future, hopefully get a B the next time you take it to average it out to a C. But I don't think that'll be a problem for anyone in the program because, again, that's exceedingly rare if it ever does happen. I have our grading rubrics there. I'm not going to go through all those because I know we're going on 5 o'clock already. So you can just read through all those on your own. What I do want to focus on, though, is our course schedule. But before we do that, let me ask you, take a little breakdown, ask you, do you have any questions or need any clarifications on any of this information up to this point? Okay. If anything pops up or you think of something, feel free to put it in text chat, or even after we're done with class tonight, you read through the syllabus again, start digesting this material. And if you do have questions, just send me an email. As I said, you'll get a response very quickly if you contact me through email. Okay, our course schedule. What topics are we covering and when are we covering them? Obviously, tonight is our course introduction and review, covering the syllabus, program introduction, and the program mission and values. So like I said, I think we'll probably be able to get you out of here by about 6 o'clock tonight if things go well. Next week, on September 2nd, we will devote our attention to American government. And we'll talk about the institutions and the processes of American government and what they mean then for our study of public administration. So this will be a refresher on things such as the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution. I provided the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution as links on our Canvas site. So please do read through those. I don't know last time you had a chance to read through the Constitution, but I think it's always good that we have some time to remember what is in the Constitution and what it means for public administration. I don't know if you, in fact, I do know you will not have another opportunity in the MPA program to probably cover the Constitution. This is about the only shot that we get at this. And so what we will do next week is we will literally go through the Constitution. We'll go through the 7 articles and the 27 amendments in the Constitution, again, with an eye on what they mean for our work as public administrators. We'll cover issues like separation of powers and federalism, which I am sure you're very familiar with, the horizontal division of power between the 3 branches of government versus the vertical separation of power between national and state governments. Your readings for next week, the articles, the Constitution, and then I also have attached 3 of the 85 Federalist Papers. And in your undergraduate political science courses, you may have read some of the Federalist Papers. We are not going to read all 85 of the Federalist Papers. We have 1 week for American government, so we're not doing that. But what I have chosen is 10, 39, and 51, with an emphasis on 10 and 39. Those are the 2 Federalist Papers that we will definitely talk about next week. As you already see for your first Canvas essay, Federalist Paper number 10 is the topic for that first Canvas essay. That's where Madison talks about factions. Federalist 39 is also a James Madison special. I apologize for not picking anything by Alexander Hamilton for those of you who've seen the musical, but I just picked the ones from James Madison. And Madison in number 39 does a really nice defense of the Constitution. And he's defending why the Constitution should be ratified by all of the anti-federalists and citizens in New York. And I think it's a really nice social science research type of approach that he takes. So please do read that one as well. And then before next week, if you could post your introduction into Canvas, that would be greatly appreciated. Again, as little or as much as you like are comfortable posting, and that is ungraded, so you don't have to worry about a grade on that. Week number 3, September 9th. We are very fortunate again this semester to have Kelly Janicek joining us from the University Library. Now, for those of you who have gone undergrad here at Cal State Long Beach, I'm sure you're very well acquainted with the University Library and how to use all those great electronic databases. For those of you who did not go to Cal State Long Beach undergrad, this would be a great introduction to the University Library for you. Kelly Janicek is our university librarian. She's our disciplinary librarian for public administration and policy. She also does political science, I think criminal justice, and several other disciplines. But she comes in every semester to show you how to do public administration specific research. So what she'll be showing you is she'll be showing you the electronic databases that are most useful for doing research in the discipline of public administration. Now, you're not doing research necessarily in this class. We are not a research course, but you will need to do research in most of your future courses. So this is a really important session that you should really be at and really pay attention to because Kelly does a really nice job with this. In addition to talking to you about the public administration electronic databases, she will also then talk to you about APA. So our formatting style guide that we use here in the MPA program is APA 7th edition. We chose APA probably about 12 or 13 years ago. I'm getting old, and so my memory's getting foggy, but it was a while ago because at the time we had different instructors using different types of style manuals, and it was a mess. So we all came to the agreement that we're going to use APA, and we're now in APA 7th. She'll take you through APA 7th and show you some examples of how you cite journal articles, books, websites, government documents, personal communication, all that good stuff. So Kelly will spend about an hour and a half or so of our class session on September 9th taking you through that presentation. Then once Kelly is done, we will then hang around and talk about accountability and ethics. So we'll talk about the different ethical standards that we have here as public servants as compared to what our counterparts may have over in the private sector. I will show you the American Society for Public Administration Code of Ethics. We'll go through the 8 different principles in the ASPA Code of Ethics because you will then be using those 8 principles for doing a Canvas essay. And so that's something that I think is important that we cover in class so that you'll have the information then to do that Canvas essay. The readings then for September 9th, not a whole lot there. Chapter out of Kettle, and then an article out of the classics text by Bennington and Moore called Public Value. And I believe it's number 54. Every time they come out with a new edition of the textbook, they screw me up because they always renumber their articles. I believe in this edition, it's number 54 called Public Value. And it's a really good article where the authors talk about the ethical roles of public administrators, especially leaders and managers in the public sector, and why leaders and managers in the public sector really need to take on what they call an expository role, where they really need to be role models for society in terms of accountability and ethics. So that's week number 3. Week number 4 on September 16th, we have the scope of government. So we'll talk about the size and scope of government and focus most of our attention on the inherent differences between public and private organizations. We'll read an article you'll see there by Graham Allison, Public and Private Organizations. Are they alike in all unimportant respects? And in that article, Allison shows us here are the similarities between public and private sectors. Here are the differences, and then answers the big so what question. Well, so what? What's the impact of having these differences between how the public sector versus the private sector operates? So Kettle, one chapter in there, and then the Graham Allison article. Then in week number 5, administrative structure and theory, this is where we'll really get to the heart of the question of what is public administration, and is public administration a discipline, or is it merely just a subfield of another academic discipline? I'll tell you, whenever I went through my graduate program, it was kind of in a traditional PhD program in a political science department. They viewed public administration and public policy as not being a discipline. They viewed it as being just a subfield within the general discipline of political science. So whenever I was getting ready to write my dissertation, I had to take these fun and exciting comprehensive exams. And I had to take comprehensive exams across 4 different areas: Congress, presidency, state and local government, and then my fourth area was public administration and policy. So it was viewed by the faculty as just being a subfield within political science. I think if you talk to a lot of the faculty in our program, they would make the argument that we are certainly our own standalone academic discipline. We're not housed within a political science program. In fact, we're not even in the same college as the political science department. They're in liberal arts, we're in College of Health and Human Services. We're in the same building, we're just across the hallway from each other, but we don't have a whole lot of interaction. A lot of MPA programs around the country are actually offered within departments of political science. So what we'll do that week is we'll talk about what are the characteristics of an academic discipline, and then does public administration meet those characteristics? Does it meet the criteria for being its own standalone discipline? Then after we have this discussion about public administration as a discipline, then we'll get into some of the theories that have been developed to help us study public organizations. I will take you through about a 150-year development of the theoretical perspectives of studying public organizations. We'll start with Max Weber in the late 1800s and take it all the way up to the current point in time. I'll show you all the different schools of thought and all the different theories that developed. And we'll talk about why those theories developed, how they came about, and what they mean for how we study public administration. You see your readings there, a couple of articles, a couple of chapters out of the Kettle textbook. The Wilson article, which is the kind of classical beginning point for the study of public administration. Max Weber's Bureaucracy, Mary Parker Follett's The Giving of Orders. Then, time permitting that week, we'll then also talk about the policy process, how we make decisions in public administration and public policy, and we'll talk about how we define effectiveness. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Why do we study public administration? Why do we study public organizations if not to try to make them more effective? Well, effectiveness can be a subjective term, in that there are a lot of different ways in which you can define effectiveness. I will introduce you to 4 different models of measuring effectiveness in public organizations during that week. So you then also have those 3 chapters in Kettle, as well as the John Kingdon, very famous article in the classics textbook on policy and policy agenda setting and policy formulation. Week number 6, administrative reform and civil service. We'll talk about how we have reformed the public employment and civil service, the eras of public employment, the influence of public sector employee unions. We'll talk about the past of civil service, where it came from, and we'll venture some guesses as best we can about the future of civil service, if there is a future for civil service at the federal level. We'll talk about some of the executive orders and some of the initiatives from the current administration and what they have meant for these career civil service types of protections. A couple of chapters there out of Kettle 7 and 8, and 1 article then out of the classics text. We'll then transition that week into a discussion of how we manage human resources or personnel. When I first became a faculty member, the first course that I was assigned was a public personnel management course back at Eastern Illinois University in Central Illinois. And the first thing I did with that public personnel management course was to put in a curricular change to try and change the title from public personnel management to human resource management. Our focus today really is much more on human resources and treating people as resources as opposed to just personnel. But we'll talk about how we match those human resources. You see the chapter there in Kettle, and then the James Perry article from the classics text. Then on October 7th, we will wrap up our show with the management of fiscal resources. We'll talk about budgeting. We'll talk about different types of budgets. We'll talk about balancing revenues and expenditures. We'll talk about measuring fiscal solvency, all those good things that we do in public administration. You see the related articles there. The Schick article from the classics textbook, a classic article that looks at the relationship between the types of budgets that we use and what we're trying to accomplish with those types of budgets. Then, as I said, for October 14th, if everything goes swimmingly and goes according to plan, then by the 14th, we'll have covered all the information we need to cover, and we won't have to have a virtual session on the 14th. Instead, you'll just have that time to complete the remainder of your final assessment. So those are the topics we'll be covering and when we'll be covering those topics. For your one-stop shopping, because I know that you are very busy. You not only have this course placing demands on your time, you may have other courses you're taking in the program, you have work obligations, you have family obligations. I absolutely understand that. So I want to make it as clear as possible what is due and when it is due in this course. So there's your one-stop shopping for your due dates. Initial skills self-assessment due on September the 9th. Draft Advancement Candidates Forum due on September 16th. Midterm assessment due on September 30th, which means I will make it available on September 16th, and you'll have 2 weeks to work on it. Final assessment due on October 14th, which I will make available 2 weeks before, give you 2 weeks to work on that as well. All of our scheduled Zoom sessions are listed there for you. And then the due dates for our Canvas essays, the introduction, if you could get that done by September 2nd, that would be wonderful. Again, it's not great. It's just an introduction to for yourself, introduce yourself to the course. And then your 5 Canvas essays, number 1 on September 9th, 2 on the 16th, 3 on the 23rd, 4 on the 30th, and then number 5 on the 7th. Now, for each of these Canvas essays, you're going to be doing, as I said before, 3 posts, an initial response and then responses to 2 of your classmates. All of those responses, all 3 of them, must be done by midnight on those days. However, I do ask that you consider doing your initial post earlier than that, because if everyone waits until September 9th at 11:55 p.m. to do their initial post and their responses on Canvas essay number 1, it's going to be a mad scramble because there's nothing there to respond to. So if you could do your initial post earlier in the week, that would be great, because then your classmates will have something to respond to, and then we're not just all scrambling to do our posts all at the last minute. So I would ask that you consider doing that. So those are our due dates. These due dates up here for your assignments. Again, whenever I give you a date, it's by midnight. And so by 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds, that's when it's due on that day. You can read through all your prompts. These prompts are also available on our Canvas site for each week of our Canvas essays. Late assignments. Hopefully there won't be any. That's the ideal situation. But I know that life does intervene. And if life intervenes in a major way and you're not able to get an assignment in by the due date, I just ask that you reach out to me. Shoot me an email and just say, this is what's going on. Or you don't have to be very specific for privacy reasons, but just say, I'm not going to be able to get this assignment due, family reasons, personal reasons, whatever the case is. And we can always work out a way so you won't get the late penalty. But I need to know that in advance so I don't give you the late penalty. Otherwise, there's a 10% penalty for every 24-hour period that an assignment is late. And that is my late policy that I've been using for many years, and it has served me pretty well. All assignments are delivered electronically through the Canvas site. So I have set up drop boxes for each of our assignments, and then we have a link to the form for each one of your Canvas essays. So everything is being done electronically through Canvas. This is an important one, policy and withdrawals. I hope you don't have to withdraw from the class, but if for some reason you don't like me or you don't like the class, that's fair. But if you do need to drop out of the class, go through the withdrawal process. Because if you just stop attending and stop turning things in, when we get to the end of our 8 weeks together, if I don't have grades on assignments so I can calculate a final grade for you, the only grade I'm allowed to give is what's called a WU grade. WU stands for unauthorized withdrawal. It's when people just stop attending and don't go through the withdrawal process. Now, it's a great question. You're probably asking yourself, why is it a WU if it's unauthorized withdrawal? That's a great question. And it really should be UW. But it's been WU ever since I've been here. WU grades are very bad for a couple of reasons. One reason is that a WU counts the same as an F for grade point average calculation purposes. So you do not want to have that on your transcript. The second thing about WU is, I was department chair for a while, and I found it was very difficult to get WUs erased from transcripts. The university does not want to remove WUs. So it's best to avoid them, keep them from going on your transcript to begin with. Policy on incompletes, there is an incomplete process. And so if there's a major life event that interrupts your ability to complete the course, I've had students in the past who have had unexpected surgeries, things like that, we can consider an incomplete. I do them very rarely and only for the most extraordinary of circumstances. The university requires that to qualify for an incomplete, you must have already completed at least two-thirds of the coursework in order to qualify for an incomplete. So hopefully we'll be able to avoid that altogether. Yeah, and AJ, for in terms of the introduction that's due on September 2nd, yeah, it's just a personal introduction. Just introduce yourself, who you are, maybe why you're in the program, what you do, anything at all that you feel comfortable sharing. So there really aren't any metrics for that. Sure, absolutely. Good question. Students with disabilities. So if you do have a documented disability, you will need to contact BMAC. BMAC does a wonderful job of reasonable accommodations. And so document those disabilities with BMAC. BMAC will then reach out to me via email with the reasonable accommodations. I've been teaching for 30 years now, and I have never had a problem with any reasonable accommodation. The nice thing about this class is we don't have timed exams. And so, that's one of the accommodations that sometimes can be difficult in a class with timed exams. We don't have that here, but do make sure that you connect with BMAC, and they do a great job of what they do. Attendance policy is completely up to you. You are a professional, you're a graduate student. So if you're here on Tuesday evenings, I encourage it because we will do some group exercises. One of the things I like to do is when we have time in the second half of class is to do breakout groups. And we've got a nice number. The original cap on this class was 15, though we went up to 20. I think now we're up to 24, but that's still not too many people in order to do breakout groups. So a lot of times what I like to do is kind of a lecture lab type of an approach, where in the first part of class, we cover our material, discuss the material for the week. And then at the second half of class, we will do what I call the lab approach, which is where we will break up into our breakout groups. I'll have a prompt that I provide to each group. With the number of students we have in this class, we probably do something along the lines of maybe 4 groups with 6 people each in those groups. Give you about 20 or 30 minutes to work in your group, and then we reconvene as a class and see what each group came up with in terms of their answers. And so I do like to do that as often as I can. We're not going to be able to do that every single week because we just don't have the time in an 8-week term to do it. But I do like to use that whenever I can do that. Okay, let's see. Karen asked question. Can we use outside articles to respond to the discussion board or use course readings only? You can use outside research, but you are not required to. So it's going to be completely up to you. So if you have some information that's not common knowledge and is not from the material that we've used in class that you would like to use to bolster your essay, then you would want to cite that information as you would normally do with APA 7th edition. So it is allowed, it is not required though. Technology requirements, I think we all have those covered because we're all here tonight. So I think we're good to go with that. Changes to the syllabus. I make very few changes to the syllabus once the semester has begun. I made a lot of them over the summer before we got to this point. But the only real changes I'll make to the syllabus will be if we are running behind and we have to push information from one week to the next, that will primarily be the change that we will be making. I never move due dates up. I won't do that to you. So the changes, if any, will be very minor in nature. There's a lot of boilerplate information here that the university syllabus policy requires that we have. Some of it's a little redundant because I like to put things in my own language. But one thing I will do is scroll down to the bottom here to our good friend, generative AI. As you are probably aware, the Cal State system has defined itself as being the first AI-empowered university system in the world. Cal State is really embracing the use of artificial intelligence. So the campus is kind of struggling in terms of should it have uniform requirements or should it allow instructors to kind of do their own thing? For the most part, and what I've included there is I've included a link there that takes you to a page on the university website that will show you guidelines for students in the use of generative AI. Essentially, what they're telling students to do is check the syllabus and talk to the instructor, because different instructors can use AI in different ways. Some instructors are not using AI. Some instructors are making very frequent use of AI. For this class, my policy is that you cannot use generative AI for the following things. You cannot use it to impersonate you in classroom contexts, such as composing discussion board prompts. You cannot use it to write papers. You cannot use it to write sentences and paragraphs to complete course assignments. You basically cannot use it to impersonate yourself. You have to do the work yourself. The one thing that I think AI can be useful for in this context is it can be a good brainstorming tool. So if you're looking for ideas, to kind of generate some ideas of topics you might want to study in future courses, uh, AI could be helpful there, but it should never be used to do your work for you. And I think that kind of goes without saying, but the university is now asking all instructors to have a statement of their AI policy spelled out in their syllabi. So that is it. That is the course. That is the syllabus. I know we spent a good bit of time going through it, an hour and 15 minutes, but I think it's important that we're all on the same page here when we get started together as a class, because then we all know crystal clear what the expectations are. And there aren't a whole lot of questions that come up later on. But speaking of questions, are there any questions remaining about the syllabus or the course requirements or anything like that? Let me share out with you. And I'm probably going to have to share my screen, so give me a second. Our fun and exciting, oops, that's not it. Our fun and exciting Canvas site, which you've probably already seen. And if you have used Canvas undergrad, then you're very familiar with it. We are probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years into Canvas now as a campus. We used to use Beachboard, which was Blackboard, but since we're Long Beach and we're all fancy and stuff, we call it Beachboard. But now we've moved on from Beachboard to Canvas. I am ambivalent. I've used Beachboard, I've used Canvas. I think their functionality is pretty similar. I don't really have an issue with either one, but we are on Canvas now. So this is our PPA 500 Canvas site. I put it in student view, so it will look somewhat like the way in which it will look for you. Again, under the announcements, that's where we have our link. Everyone found it, so you know how to get into our Tuesday evening sessions. The My Textbook Hub, this is where you have your D1, DA digital materials. And you see both of the textbooks there. Again, if you don't want to be charged, you don't want to use digital materials, opt out by September 8th at 11:59 p.m. And you can do that directly here on the site. Syllabus is available for you that we just went through, and most of the information you're going to need will then be in the modules. And so each week is a different module for us. So here this week, we have our PowerPoint slides on the program introduction, the mission and value statement. This is where you will post your introductory post that is ungraded. Please post your introduction in that thread. So if you haven't done this before, which most of you probably have, you can just compose your introduction or whatever post you're doing in Microsoft Word, copy and paste it, hit reply, paste it into the discussion area, and then hit submit. And it's as simple as that. Let's see. Let's go back to our modules and go back down here. Then you'll see what I've also included is when we talk about our program introduction in a couple of minutes, I'll talk to you not only about options, but I'll talk to you about the certificates that are available to you. I've got a link here for certificate requirements to show you all the courses you need to take if, for instance, you want to apply for or want to be part of the employee-employer relations certificate program. Certificates are add-ons, and so you're going to do 39 units to earn your MPA degree. Along the way, you can also add on a certificate. So if you're interested in human resource management, the employee-employer relations certificate might be a nice one to add on. But when you add on that certificate, you're still only doing 39 units, but you'll have to take certain prescribed courses. And so those prescribed courses are then listed there in that file for you. And you'll see then for next week, we got our PowerPoint slides. You'll notice on the slides, my slides are very bare bones slides. They're just kind of an agenda, very skeletal in nature, because we put all the flesh on the bones, if you will, in our Tuesday evening sessions. Here's a link to Articles of Confederation, to the Constitution, to all 85 Federalist Papers. If you just want to read the ones that we're going to be looking at, there's a link to 10, 39. And again, 51, we probably won't talk much about. So focus mostly on Federalist Paper 10 and 39. There's your link for Canvas essay number 1, and there's your link for submitting your initial skill self-assessment. and so on and so on. So you'll see this is how we have everything organized. There aren't a whole lot of additional readings that I have for you beyond the Kettle textbook and the classics text, but here is one of them. And in week 4, when we talk about Woodrow Wilson and we talk about his study of administration article, we will recognize Woodrow Wilson as kind of being the grandfather of the study of public administration. But we also have to recognize his faults as well. And Woodrow Wilson, history has not been very kind to Woodrow Wilson because we have found more and more things out about Woodrow Wilson over the years. So much so that a lot of universities who used to have Woodrow Wilson on their buildings have removed the name. So Princeton University, where he was president for many years before he became president of the United States, their School of Public Affairs is a Woodrow Wilson School of Public Affairs, and they were housed in Woodrow Wilson Hall. They've removed his name from the hall because, again, through history, we have found out that he really viewed civil service not really as a way to encourage merit as much as a way to segregate federal employment. And we'll talk more about that later on. But this is a book review that really acknowledges some of those flaws and failings associated with Woodrow Wilson. So we're just not extolling his virtues. We're saying, yes, he did kind of establish public administration as a field of study, but here are all the other horrible things that he did as well. And I think it's important to have that entire context in understanding Woodrow Wilson. So that's just an additional reading I've added on for that week, and you can see all the modules on the way down. So I do have some additional readings in there as well for you. Things such as examples of different budget formats. So when we get to public budgeting and finance, I'll show you 4 different budget formats. I just have examples of those in here. Likewise, when we're doing human resource management, I have some examples of how to do a point factor job evaluation, the general schedule of civil service at the federal level, graphic rating scales that we use for performance evaluations, and so on and so on. So I just think it's good to give you some actual artifacts of what these things look like that we'll be discussing in our Tuesday evening courses or class sessions. So I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory, but that is our Canvas site. And I think I've provided you enough information in the Canvas site for you to be successful without overloading you and inundating you with a lot of extraneous type of information, hopefully, if I've done my job right. But I guess you guys can all tell me that after we get done with our 8 weeks. So we won't take a break tonight because I did promise to get you out early. So let's just quickly kind of do a recap of the information you got at the orientation. Go through this information again, some of the important policies you need to be aware of in the MPA program, introduce you to the mission statement of the program, the values that we adhere to in the program, and then talk to you very briefly at the end about NASPA accreditation, what NASPA accreditation is and why it is so important to be in a NASPA accredited MPA program. So we'll start there with NASPA accreditation. We are NASPA accredited. NASPA stands for, and I always get it wrong, even though I do a lot of work for them, I still get it wrong. They changed their name a few years ago. They used to be the National Association. Now they're the Network of Schools of Public Policy, Administration, and Affairs, or something like that. It's a very cumbersome title. They went to the title network because they now accredit MPA programs around the world. They have several programs in Italy and China and all across Southeast Asia. I think they have a couple in Africa that they're accrediting. So they're really now worldwide, but they're called NASPA. They accredit graduate public affairs programs around the world. We went through our last NASPA reaccreditation in 2023. We got the longest accreditation they give, which is 7 years, which means that we are reaccredited through the year 2030. I'm assuming everyone will be out of the program by the time we get to 2030. But NASPA accreditation, we were first NASPA accredited as a program way back in the 1980s. I think NASPA started accrediting programs in 1982, I want to say. I think we were accredited first in 1984. I mean, I wasn't here, but the program was accredited back in 1984. And we have been continuously NASPA accredited ever since then. Full-time faculty members, our faculty nucleus is made up of Dr. Butts, who you probably already met as our department chair, Dr. Matthews. Dr. Matthews teaches primarily public policy analysis and nonprofit management. There's me. I do the directing of the Distance Learning Masters of Public Administration program. I teach every single semester this 500 course every fall and spring. I also teach organization theory and intergovernmental relations for our distance learning MPA program and do 697 as well for both of the programs. Dr. Baber is on our faculty early retirement program, so you may or may not have the pleasure of encountering Dr. Baber. Faculty early retirement means that over the next 2 years, he only teaches 1 out of 2 semesters. So he teaches fall semester, and then he goes gallivanting around Europe during spring semester. So that's kind of his incentive that they give to faculty members to kind of get them to retire. So he's about 2 years away from complete retirement. He teaches primarily the 660 organization theory course. He teaches completely online. So if you like an online course, Dr. Baber will be your faculty member for organization theory. Dr. Martin, he's been with the university for about 26 or 27 years now. He teaches human resource management as well as urban affairs. So if you're in the option in urban affairs, you'll get to know Dr. Martin pretty well. Dr. Tina Zhao, she is our newest tenure track faculty member, and newest by that I mean I think she's going into her 6th year now with us. She is our graduate advisor, and I'm sure you probably already met her as well in the orientation. Any questions you have about electives you want to take, Dr. Zhao will be your faculty member. And then Professor Richard Nkrumah. He's our full-time lecturer. He came on board last spring and he teaches 500 as well as budgeting. And so when you take your budgeting course, there's probably a pretty good chance that you'll have Professor Nkrumah if you are taking that course in the spring semester. Those are just our full-time faculty members. When you look through the schedule and you're scheduling your classes, you may see other names on there. Those are our adjunct faculty members. Adjunct faculty members, we have a great cadre of adjunct faculty members who are city managers, who are agency directors, who really couple their academic experience. They all have at least an MPA. Some of them have doctorates. They couple that with practical real world public administration experience. And so don't hesitate to take a class with an adjunct faculty member because they really are excellent. And the vast majority of our adjunct faculty members have been teaching with us for many years now. You're aware of your requirements for the MPA program. It's a 39 unit requirement. You're aware of those core courses we have listed there on the screen, and then 2 sections of PPA 697, where you will be completing a series of 5 case studies, one in budgeting, one in HR, one org theory, one policy, and one in research methods. In addition to those 24 units of elective courses, you will then also be taking 15 units, 5 courses in electives. As I said, if you want to take your electives outside the department, you should talk to Dr. Zhao, and she can advise you in terms of which electives are open for you and which are not open for our students. Those electives, as you see on the draft advancement form, those have to be listed on your advancement form. The advancement form is essentially just your plan of study. And so what will happen is that whenever you officially advance a candidacy, probably in the spring, that then kind of cements your program of study. Then when you are at the end of the program and you're getting ready to graduate, you will then petition to graduate or apply to graduate. That will then trigger a grad audit by enrollment services. They'll go and look at the courses you took and make sure you took all the courses that you have on your advancement to candidacy form. Now, if along the way you decide, well, I'm not going to take leadership and instead I'm going to take intergovernmental relations, not that I'm trying to sell intergovernmental relations, mind you, but if you do make that decision, then all we have to do is a program change form. It's a very simple thing. Kathy Allen in our office can take care of that for you. So it's not the end of the world if you end up changing the courses that you are taking. But it's just kind of your program of study of this is what I'm taking and the university would like to see you take those. A question from Lauren, is it common to have summer classes available for the MPA? That's an excellent question, and the answer is yes. We offer in the summer usually a full slate of the required courses, except for obviously 500 because nobody enters the program in the summer. So budgeting is offered in the summer, 577 HR is offered, org theory is offered. I usually teach org theory in the summer. 670 policy is offered, and Dr. Butts offers 696 research methods. So all those core courses are offered every single summer. And we also then have a smaller selection of elective courses. Every summer I offer intergovernmental relations. That's the only time that it's offered in the year is in the summer. So if you're interested in intergovernmental relations, You'll have to take it in the summer. Leadership sometimes is offered in the summer as well. We usually have probably about 7 or 8 courses that are offered in the summer. Good question by Catherine. Are summer classes also about 8 weeks long? Summer courses are 6 weeks in duration. And the way in which summer session works is, and it's going to sound weird, there's summer session 1 and then summer session 3. Question might be, what happened to summer session 2? We don't really do the middle session. So there's summer session 1 and summer session 3. Each of those sessions are 6 weeks. And so summer session 1 will start right after spring semester ends, usually runs through July 4th. But then summer session 3 will begin the week after that and run up until about a week before the beginning of fall semester. So they are 6 weeks in duration. Most of our summer courses are offered online just because it is summertime and people's schedules and such. Some of them are synchronous. So, like my organization theory course in the summer is synchronous. So, it's just like what we're doing here with Zoom sessions. My intergovernmental relations course is asynchronous, which means that you work at your own schedule, your own pace, working through the 6 different modules, one module for each of the weeks without any Zoom sessions. So, it really depends upon the instructor and the course. But yes, we have a full slate of courses, each of them, for the most part, 6 weeks. There is a provision where an instructor can teach across both summer session 1 and 3 in the entire 12 weeks. Our faculty typically do not do that. We usually do the 6 weeks in summer session 1 and summer session 3. Winter courses, that's another good question. Winter courses, we typically don't have many of those. Typically, we have 1 to 2 winter courses. The one that is oftentimes offered is Dr. Martin's Race and Inequality, PPA 533. In the past, he has offered that every single winter session. I think that Dr. Butts has also offered an elective in the winter as well. But we only usually have 1 or 2 courses in the winter, and they do tend to be elective courses just because we don't have enough time to do an entire core course. Do summer classes typically have fewer slots open? No, it's actually relatively easy to get into most summer classes. And we tend to be very flexible in terms of going above our cap in those summer classes as well. The nice thing about summer session is it recently changed as of last summer. Before last summer session was run by the College of Professional and Continuing Education, CPACE. So it had a different fee structure and it was more expensive to take summer classes. Now it's the university that is running summer session and it's become much cheaper to take summer session classes. And I don't want to misspeak on this, but I believe it is students who took 3 classes in the summer, they did it for the cost of 2. I think is how that works. So it is much cheaper to take summer classes now than it was in the past. And yes, you can certainly get open slots in the vast majority of those courses. My organization theory course didn't fill this summer. I think I had 18 out of 20 in that course. My intergovernmental relations course, we had 20, but we could have gone above that if we needed to. So it's a really good opportunity to accelerate your program of study. And all of the courses are offered in the summer are certainly very doable in 6 weeks. And we know they're doable because they're the same courses that we offer in our distance learning program. And our distance learning program courses are all 6 weeks. And so it works in the DL program, works equally as well then for our summer program as well. Yeah, I strongly recommend considering summer if you're available. It's a great way to speed up your program. Um, Transfers. If you attended another MPA program and you want to transfer credits into our program, that is probably possible, but you can only transfer in up to 9 credit units. So up to 3 courses into our program. Those courses that you transfer in will transfer in as electives. All the core courses must be completed in residency in our program, so you could bring 3 courses in as electives, but they have to be in an MPA program in a course that is a graduate only course. So there can't be a course that's cross-coded undergraduate and graduate. It must be graduate only. And it must be offered by a regionally accredited university. Now, we don't have a requirement that the MPA program you're transferring from has to be NASPA accredited. That's not a requirement, but it needs to be in a regionally accredited university, which The vast majority of universities are regionally accredited, so that typically is not a problem. So yes, you can transfer some courses in. If you do have some courses you want to transfer in, Dr. Zhao or Dr. Butts can certainly help you with that. We've already talked about advancement to candidacy, so I don't think we really have to talk much more about that, except to remind you that you have to advance to candidacy at least one semester before you plan to graduate. So if you're graduating in spring 2027, you have to advance to candidacy no later than fall of 2026. So you have to advance one semester before you graduate. You also need to be enrolled in the semester in which you advance. Enrollment services will not accept your advancement form if you are not enrolled in classes. So make sure you're enrolled in something in the semester in which you're going to advance. After you advance to candidacy, then as you get closer to graduation, you'll then petition to graduate. Or now they just call it apply to graduate. I'm old school, so I say petition to graduate. Now it's called apply to graduate. You can do that directly on the Enrollment Services website. They have a little link on there, and you can do that right on their website. You have certain dates you have to petition to graduate by. You have to, if you're going to graduate in the spring or summer semester, you must petition to graduate by October 15th of the preceding fall semester. If you are going to graduate in the fall or the winter, you must petition to graduate by March 1st of the preceding spring semester. Now, the big caveat here is, yes, you should adhere to these deadlines, but again, I've been here 25 years, and I have never seen enrollment services deny a late petition. And so if you miss those dates, there is a late petition to graduate, a late application to graduate. They will charge you a fee. It used to be $15, but with the way costs are going now, I can't tell you what the cost is. It's on the Enrollment Services website, but it's a nominal fee, and then they'll allow you to petition to graduate. Applying to graduate, petition to graduate will trigger that grad audit, where they'll go through and make sure you took all the courses you have listed on your advancement form. We already talked about directed research. So you know what directed research is all about, completing those 5 case studies, and you'll have those 6 units in which to complete those case studies. Adrian asked, does the intergovernmental relations course require candidacy? I'm doing the program through distance learning. I'm looking for another online course to add. It doesn't require candidacy. The intergovernmental relations course is actually one of the courses in the curriculum for our distance learning program. And so it's actually part of that distance learning program already. But no, there are no requirements for intergovernmental relations as a course, no prerequisites for it. You actually can do it through what they call it, CSU Open University, or whatever, online, whatever it is. And so I have students that take it who are not actually even at Cal State Long Beach who take the intergovernmental relations course. And so, yeah, there are no prerequisites. It's pretty much wide open to register for. And yes, I am selling it a little bit, so I will admit that. But it's a good course. I'm biased, but I do think it's a good course. I think you would enjoy it. And it's nice that it's asynchronous, in that, it really gives you the opportunity. If you can work ahead if you want to, you can do all the readings and have, all 6 modules done within 2 or 3 weeks, if that works with your schedule, and that is absolutely fine. Again, we know what directed research is, and so I don't think we have to cover that much more. It is not a classroom-based course, and so we do 697. It's all independently working on your 5 case studies. So there are no assigned meeting dates for that. Options. Now, as we said, there are 3 options in the program. The vast majority of people came in the program in the general MPA. If you came in under the option Urban Affairs, there is a link to the catalog so you can see what courses you need to take to satisfy that option. Same type of thing with the option in Public Works. Essentially, the main difference is for the option Urban Affairs, you have one additional core course, and that's PPA 610 Seminar in Urban Affairs. And then you'll have one fewer elective course, 4 instead of 5. So it'll still be 39 units. Same type of thing with Public Works. Your additional core course will be PPA 554 Public Works Management, and then you'll have 4 instead of 5 electives. There we go. Regardless of what program you're in, the general, the urban affairs, or the public works, you then also have the option, if you would like, I'll say the alternative, not to use confusing words and use option too much. You'll have the alternative that you can also add on a certificate. By far the most popular certificate is the employer-employer relations certificate. And I have a link there to show you what courses you need to take for the employee-employer relations certificate. One of the major differences, if you want to get that certificate, you are required to take PPA 575 employer relations. And then there is a list of electives that you can choose from that would count toward that certificate program. The nice thing about the certificate is you can add on a certificate and still stay within your 39 units. So it won't require you to go beyond 39 units because those courses that are required in that certificate can then also double count as electives to your general MPA degree. So you can do it all within 39 units. The public sector financial management one, that one's kind of in flux in that the person who created it and serviced it retired about 4 or 5 years ago, and he is now floating around on his boat out in the Pacific Ocean. I'm sure he's a very happy person right now. But since he is gone, and the College of Business, we use a lot of College of Business courses for the public sector financial management certificate. A lot of those courses are impacted and not open to our students. It became very difficult for people to finish that certificate program. So I guess my advice is if you're interested in that, talk to Dr. Butts as our department chair. Last spring, I know we had several students who contacted me. I had to serve as interim chair last spring because Dr. Butts was on paternity leave. And I had several students who contacted me saying they were interested in the public sector financial management certificate. We weren't able to support it at that time, so I kind of handed it off to Dr. Butts when he came back as chair in May. So talk to him if that's something you're interested in to see if it actually is still reasonable and doable. The other one is public management analysis. We have very few students who do that certificate, again, just because of availability of courses. But for the most part, it's the employee-employer relations certificate. That if people are going to do a certificate, that tends to be the one that they do. Let's spend a couple minutes talking about the student learning portfolio. When you get to the end of your program and you do your 697 and you complete your 5 cases, then the final thing that you will do in the program is you will put together your student learning portfolio. Now, the student learning portfolio today looks a lot different than it looked 5 or 6 years ago. We have really streamlined the portfolio to make it much easier, not just for students, but also for faculty members. So the way in which the portfolio works today is it consists of only 3 parts. Part one of the student learning portfolio will be the initial skills self-assessment that you're doing here in PPA 500, and then the final skills self-assessment that you'll do in PPA 697 after you've completed your 5 case studies. And it is essentially, as I said, just a redo of the initial assessment that you do here in 500. So the initial and final skills self-assessments will go into part one of your student learning portfolio. Part two of the student learning portfolio requires a little bit more discussion. And you may have talked about this at orientation, but it consists of your pre and post instructional assignments that you complete in your core courses, with the exception of 500 and 697. So there are no pre and post instructional assignments here in 500. But you will have pre and post instructional assignments in 555, 577, 660, 670, and 696 in those 5 core courses. What they are is they are assessment mechanisms that will allow you and allow faculty members to assess what you have learned during your time in each one of those courses. So the pre-instructional assignment is an assignment that will be due within the first 3 weeks of the course. You will complete that assignment using only what you know about the topic. So not using any books, not using any outside resources, just what you currently know. Then the last 3 weeks of the class, you will complete a similar assignment called a post-instructional, but you'll be able to use all the information that you learned throughout the course to then complete that post-instructional assignment. So it's kind of a real simple concept. So we look at how you answer the questions on the post-instructional compared to how you answer on the pre-instructional, and it gives us some type of assessment of how much you learned in that class. So I'll give you an example. Whenever I used to teach budgeting back in the dark ages, when I taught budgeting, my pre-instructional assignment was students would go out there to a website, a city website, and download a copy of the city's budget. They would read the city budget, And then there will be 8 simple questions that they would answer based upon that budget, but they would use only what they currently know about budgets. So for instance, one of the questions would be, what type of budget format is this? Well, if you have worked with budgets before in the public sector, you probably know what the budget formats are and can identify what format it is. If you've never worked with public budgets before, you don't know what budget formats are, all you would have to say is, I don't have the information to answer the question. And that's fine. And that's a suitable answer to that question. Another question was assess the fiscal solvency of the city based upon the information from the budget. Again, if you don't know the indicators of fiscal solvency when you start budgeting, you're like pretty much everyone else in the class. And so you say, I don't have the information to answer that question. Throughout the class, we would cover all the different indicators of fiscal solvency. So once you do the post-instructional and re-answer that question, you have all the information you need. And so I don't have the information is no longer an acceptable answer on the post-instructional. So that's the idea between these pre and post-instructional assignments. Now, my advice to you is when you take these core courses, take a look at the syllabus. And if the instructor does not spell out very specifically what the pre and post instructional assignments are on their syllabus, contact the instructor and ask the instructor, what do we use as a pre and what do you use as a post instructional? Because those will then have to go into part 2 of your student learning portfolio. Now, when you submit them into part 2 of your student learning portfolio, you submit them as is, just as you submitted them in the class. You don't have to make any revisions or any modifications or anything. Just go in just exactly as you submitted them when you took the course. And then part 3 of the portfolio will be the 5 case studies that you complete as part of 697. And again, you will submit them in part 3 exactly how you submitted them for review to your 697 instructor. So you don't have to make any changes or revisions. They just go in as you submitted them. Your portfolio then, these 3 parts of your portfolio will then be submitted through electronically through OneDrive. And every student, every faculty member, every staff member has a OneDrive account. And when you go to your single sign-on, your sso.csulb.edu, you'll have all these chiclets. All these, I love that, chiclets, all these little icons. One of those chiclets will be OneDrive. And you click on the OneDrive chiclet, you'll be in your OneDrive account. You create a folder for part 1, put your initial and final skill self-assessment in that folder. Create a folder for part 2, put your pre and post instructional assignments in there. Part 3, in that folder, you put your 5 case studies. Then you share your student learning portfolio with your 697 instructor, and that's it. It's as simple as that. There are no approval forms. There are no modifications or revisions. Your 697 instructor will just make sure that everything is in there. So you looked at, do they have the 3 folders? Do they have all the documents they need in those 3 folders? They're not going to go back and regrade anything. There's no grade given on the student learning portfolio. It simply is a mechanism for assessment. Then for our NASPA assessment, what we will do is we will select a random sample of student portfolios every semester. We remove the identifiers from those portfolios, and then we'll have 1 or 2 faculty members look through those assignments, especially the pre and post instructional assignments, and kind of get a sense of how much each student learned and what each student learned in each one of those core courses. So it's all part of just our assessment process, no grades attached to the student learning portfolio. Student learning portfolio needs to be submitted by December 1st for fall graduation and May 1st for spring graduation. Now, I know this is way down the road. This is the last thing that you're going to do in the program is submit your portfolio. So this is 2 or 3 or 4 years away, but it's good that we cover it here just so you kind of have a working familiarity with it when you do get to that time in the program. Some of these policies we're going to talk about now were discussed, I'm sure, at orientation, but just to cover them and again really quickly, as we said, you have to advance candidacy at least 1 semester before the semester you're graduating. I always advise people to advance the candidacy early in your academic career. You'll be eligible once you have 6 units done. It's usually good to advance at that point in time so you have a plan of study. And it's important to have that plan of study so you kind of know what you're taking and you have something to adhere to as you go through the program. University has a 7-year rule. So from the time that you enter the university, you matriculate into the university, you have 7 years to complete your MPA degree. If you are unable to complete your MPA degree in 7 years, then you're going to have to come back into the program to complete the MPA degree. Now, in our department, we have a revalidation policy of 10 years, which means, let's say, the 7 years have expired and you realize, oh, my 7 years are over. I have to come back into the program to finish it up. And you come back in year number 8. So you get readmitted in year number 8. You have some courses that probably are, certainly all your courses are probably less than 10 years old. If they're less than 10 years old, we can revalidate all those courses you've already taken and apply them to your MPA degree. So you don't have to start all over again. However, if your courses are more than 10 years old, they cannot be revalidated and you would have to then retake those courses. Now, this can obviously all be avoided just by finishing a degree within 7 years, and you don't have to worry about revalidation. So this is just in those rare instances where someone goes away and then comes back after 7 years. You also, from the time you are matriculated into the university, you are required to be registered in courses every fall and spring semester. You don't have to take courses in the winter and you don't have to take them in the summer. That's completely up to you. But you have to be registered in something every fall and every spring semester until you graduate. If you are not registered in courses in a fall or spring semester, the university considers that to be a break in continuous enrollment. They will require you to then reapply to the university and reapply to the MPA program. May not sound like a big deal, but many years ago when I was chair back in, I guess it was 2008, we went through that huge budget crisis here in California. And the state of California came in and told Cal State Long Beach, you cannot admit any new students. And so we had a moratorium on admitting new students. And I had a few students who were then coming back to the program because they had broken enrollment and they want to reapply. And I had to say, we can't accept you because we're not allowed to admit students until the budget crisis gets better. And that was for a semester or two. So it can have some practical impact. So just make sure that you're registered every fall and spring semester. If for some reason you are not able to register for courses in a fall or a spring semester, what you'll need to do is an education leave form. And the university will give you up to 2 education leaves without any real documentation. So you can go on the Enrollment Services website and download the education leave form. They'll ask for a brief justification for why you're taking a leave, but they won't ask for documentation. It's an easy process and they'll allow you to do that up to 2 times. What the education leave does is it will stop the clock from ticking and it'll allow you to take a semester off where you don't have to register and avoid breaking continuous enrollment. So if there's a semester where you're not going to be able to enroll in courses, I would highly recommend before you do the education leave to contact Dr. Butts or Dr. Zhao, let them know what is going on, and then so they'll know you're taking education leave and then coming back in a future semester. It's always good if you can just loop us into what's going on. There are always things that we can do to try and help and expedite your progress through the program. We're all here to help you successfully complete the program, as long as you let us know what's going on. Good academic standing is considered to be a cumulative GPA of at least 3.0. If you fall below a cumulative GPA of 3.0, then you'll be placed upon academic probation. The university is trying to do a better job of getting people off of academic probation. They're really trying to avoid disqualifying people from the university. The way in which it worked in the past is if you went on academic probation by having a deficient GPA, then you had 2 semesters to bring your cumulative GPA back up to 3.0, or the university would disqualify you. Now, the university is trying not to disqualify anybody these days, but it's just better for you to keep your GPA above 3.0, then you don't have to worry about any of this. If you missed the initial orientation in July, no, just use tonight's date as your orientation completion date because we're covering a lot of the same information that was covered at the orientation. Grade appeals. There is a grade appeals provision if you feel that the grade that you received from an instructor was arbitrary, capricious, or prejudicial. And that's the standard, arbitrary, capricious, or prejudicial. You can then file a grade appeal. The way in which a grade appeal process works is the first stage in grade appeal is informal, in that you are encouraged to contact the instructor and try to work out an agreement informally with the instructor. If that does not work, then you can file a formal grade appeal with the department chair, with Dr. Butts. Once Dr. Butts receives that formal grade appeal, he will then contact the instructor and find out what's going on with the instructor. We'll look at the documentation the student provides, the documentation that the instructor provides, and then provide all that documentation to our departmental grade appeals committee. Departmental Grade Appeals Committee will then hear the appeal and will then render a decision. That appeal that can then be appealed up, that decision can then be appealed up to the College Grade Appeals Committee. Their decision can then be appealed up to the University Grade Appeals Committee, and the University Grade Appeals Committee decision is essentially then final. I've served on the departmental committee, the college committee, as well as the university grade appeals committee. University-wide, there are a fair number of grade appeals. Same thing at the college level. Our departmental grade appeals committee, I don't think has had a grade appeal in probably 8 or 9 years. It just really doesn't happen in our department. I think that there are, good relationships between faculty and students, and most of our faculty members are very clear about their grading standards, and if points are deducted, they're clear about why those points are deducted. That's one of my pet peeves when I was in graduate school is you would get a paper back from an instructor and it would be 95 out of 100. Well, 95 is an A, so I'm pretty happy with that. But what could I have done better to get a higher grade? Well, there is no feedback, so I don't know what I could have done better. I always will provide you feedback. Anytime I deduct any points, I'll tell you exactly why those points were deducted and what you could have done in a future assignment, what you can do in a future assignment in order to earn those points. And I think that's a really important formative feedback that faculty members need to give. And for the most part, you get that for most of our instructors and most of our classes. So we don't really have much of an issue at all with grade appeals. But I just want to let you know it is there in case that's something you need to avail yourself of. So I said all your core courses have to be completed before you can take 697. Those are kind of the major policies that tend to trip people up in their time in the program. When I was department chair, I would say probably 75 to 80% of my time was spent trying to fix issues that students had with the bureaucracy. And they come from a variety of different reasons, but that's where the department chair spends most of their time. So as long as you can abide by these policies we covered, I think that you will have a very um, painless, if you will, journey through the MPA program. Our MPA program is somewhat unique because we have a unique mission statement and we also have unique public service values that we base our curriculum and our teaching upon. So in our last couple minutes here together, I know we literally, it's 3 until 6, but we may go a little bit beyond 6, but I think it's important that I introduce you to the mission of the program, our public service values, and then what it means to be a NASPA accredited program. So this is the mission of our MPA program. Dr. Butts probably shared it with you at the orientation. I'm not going to read through it with you, but some of the things I would like to highlight. We are very fortunate in our program to have one of the most diverse student populations of any MPA program in the entire country. And I can say that with confidence because I have served as a site visit chair for the past 12 years for NASPA. I get to travel around on accreditation visits to a variety of different MPA programs all over the country. I served for 3 years as one of the 12 accreditation commissioners who made the decision of which programs got accreditation, which programs didn't get accreditation. So I get to see a lot of programs. And I can say that we have probably the most diverse, probably not even probably, we do have the most diverse student population that I have seen in any MPA program across the country. So we really do value and emphasize diversity. We value and emphasize ethics. NASPA allows programs to deal with ethics in a couple of different ways. One way is you can have a standalone ethics required course. The other way is that you can sprinkle ethics into all of your courses throughout the program. We have chosen the latter. So we have ethics that will be covered in every single course, core as well as elective, throughout the entire program. We chose not to create another core course because that would add on 3 more units, and we didn't want you to have to pay for 3 more units. So we really do focus on ethics. We have 1 week in this class in 2 weeks from now where we will focus on accountability and ethics. Equity minded, that's another important part of our mission statement. Social equity is one of the important values that underlie the current approach to public administration. And that's a major value that underpins our program as well. Another thing I'll point out to you and highlight from our mission statement, the idea that we focus on public sector, but we also focus on the nonprofit sector as well. So if you are currently working in the nonprofit sector, or if you aspire to work in the nonprofit sector, the training that you receive in this program will serve you quite well for a career in a nonprofit organization. I've had several students who have gone on from this program and have founded their own nonprofit organizations. One of my students left the program, graduated from the program, founded their own nonprofit that builds houses in her home city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And it's been going now for probably about 12 or 13 years. She's been profiled on morning shows and been very successful with it. So we focus both nonprofit as well as public service. Our values that we established that allowed us to then generate this mission statement are as follows. Enhancing diversity in the faculty and student population. Again, we are very diverse in terms of our student population, and we continue to work toward enhancing diversity in our faculty as well. There are certain limitations in a Cal State system in terms of diversifying your faculty, and so it can be relatively difficult. However, when I was chair, we hired 2 new tenure track positions. Both of those 2 tenure track positions were designated as diversity-based hires. So we are making very good progress in that regard. We've made really good progress in terms of diversifying our adjunct cadre of faculty as well. And so I think this is something that we are really making great strides on. Embracing diversity in our teaching. Diversity is something that cuts through our entire curriculum, and you'll see that in a lot of the readings in your future courses. Promoting the public interest. After all, that's what we are in public and nonprofit service for, is to promote the public interest. Demonstrate ethical behavior. Now, I've said we've kind of sprinkled ethics throughout our entire curriculum. Emphasizing integrity, emphasizing social justice, and emphasizing professional competence. When you come out of an MPA program, you should be equipped with certain competencies that will allow you to effectively lead and manage in the public and nonprofit sectors. The competencies that we focus on are the competencies that come from our accrediting body of NASPA. NASPA has 5 universal required competencies. Those are number 1, to lead and manage in the public interest. Number 2, to participate in and contribute to the policy process. Number 3, to analyze, synthesize, think critically, solve problems, and make evidence-informed decisions in a complex environment. Number 4, to articulate, apply, and advance a public service perspective. And number 5, to communicate and interact productively and in culturally responsive ways with a diverse and changing workforce and society at large. Those are the 5 competencies that NASPA expects every single student who graduates from a NASPA accredited program to be able to demonstrate. So what we have done is we have crosswalked our curriculum to these competencies. So some of the courses you take, such as public budgeting and finance, will equip you with the skills that you need to effectively lead and manage in the public interest. Our 696 Research Methods Program Evaluation course will equip you with the competency to be able to analyze, synthesize, and think critically. This class will equip you with the competency of being able to articulate, apply, and advance a public service perspective. We spend a lot of time in this class making sure that we understand the inherent differences between public organizations and private organizations. And then you'll have several assignments across the curriculum in the program whereby you will have to communicate effectively, whether it be through a written paper or through an oral presentation or the creation of a multimedia presentation. That allows us to get at this fifth competency of communicating and interacting productively. We have put a lot of time and a lot of thought into designing a curriculum that will emphasize all five of these universal required competencies. And that's the big difference of graduating from a NASPA accredited program as opposed to a non-accredited program. When employers know you graduate from Cal State Long Beach and it's a NASPA accredited program, they will know that there are certain standards that our program had to meet in order to achieve that accreditation. I have gone through, I've led three different reaccreditation processes. Dr. Butts led his first one back in 2023. We can both tell you what a time-consuming effort it is. And it's really an exhausting process to go through this accreditation process. It is so much work, it is so much documentation, but it is well worth it because it really sets us apart from other non-accredited MPA programs. There will not be a test on this. So you don't have to memorize the mission. You don't have to memorize the five universal competencies. But I think it's important here in our first night together as you enter the program to be aware of what these competencies are. And then you can look for these competencies as you take your future courses in the program and see which courses are providing you with which of these five competencies. I apologize for lying to you and keeping you until 6:05. I said we have an early night and get you out by 6. So I owe you those 5 minutes. I apologize for that. But again, I think this is an important introduction as you come into the MPA program. So this time, are there any questions or any clarifications at all before we call the night? Okay. As always, I'm available via email. Any questions emerge to you as you review the syllabus or review this recording, feel free to reach out to me. I'll have this recording up on our Canvas site sometime tomorrow morning. And please do those readings for next week on American government, the Constitution, Articles, Confederation, and those Federalist Papers. And then next week, we'll spend our time talking about American government and the role of public administration in American government. Let's see, we got a couple of comments here. Let's see, okay, everyone good? All right. It was really nice meeting everyone tonight. I look forward to working with you over the next 8 weeks, and I'll talk to you again then next Tuesday. So take care and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Powell.